welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Offstage with Ward Anderson. I am your host, yours truly. Today, we're going to be talking about the evolution of media, where the entertainment industry is going, where it has come so far. And I have with me four people who know all about the new ins and outs of show business. Sitting right here, she is an amazing social media expert. She is the CEO of Foxtrot Digital Communications. Please welcome Erica Fox. She is a writer, producer, director, and actress. She is also a veteran of digital entertainment, and she just completed directing her first feature film. Please welcome Jackie English, right there. A producer, a performer, a director, a jack of all trades, a man who is an expert on everything from being behind the camera to social media. His name is Jean-Té Lé. A professional wrestler, actor, host, and online sensation. The gentleman sitting next to me, his name is R.J. Skinner. Yeah!
Hello. Thank you. Sweet of you.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you, and welcome to everybody here. This is an interesting episode because for all the episodes I've done of Offstage, I've talked to actors and musicians and comedians, and we've talked everything about, diversity to sexism to ageism, but this is something new because it's something I don't actually know really anything about, and that's new technology. Each of you has some experience in that, and that's why you're here. I was in a viral video, a commercial that went viral 10 years ago, and that was 1 million people saw that. And I thought, wow, and I have no idea how it happened. And every chance of duplicating that was lost. And that's the thing, right? I hear everyone say, what you need to do is go viral, as if that's as easy as sending out a business card. What does that even mean now? What you need to do is go viral.
I mean, that's one of those things that you want to happen. It's like one of those general statements when people say, they told you you shouldn't wear this, or, they said this. When people talk about going viral, they talk about, past accomplishments of other people. There's no real guideline into going viral. You can't, there's no real handbook into saying that this, if you follow this algorithm, you will go viral.
Going viral is like a result. It's like saying, you know what you should do is win an Oscar. Like, it's like, okay,
all right,
but
you know what?
That's a result. That's like
But it's the anti-algorithm, right? It's not about, do this and the algorithm will pick it up. It's do this and cut through that noise. How can you be so wild, crazy, controversial, artistic, beautiful? How do you make a big enough splash that every other splash around you is sort of covered over by your shine, right? And so it's not about sort of breaking that algorithm or figuring out how a social media platform works and how to get enough, from our perspective, organic views versus paid views. It really comes down to how can I do something that no one's really seen before in an age where everything feels like it's been there and done that, right?
Mm-hmm. But viralness may not always be a good thing. Because you got a video that's got 1 million views, amazing. There's a video of 2 girls beating each other up in a mall that has 20 million. So you're like, well, what is the point? I mean, I guess viral's good, but I think it's more important to build an audience that will continually enjoy what you're doing.
Well, I mean, and that's something, right? I talked about a commercial I was in that just happened to be seen 1 million or 2 million times online, and that's great. But a kitten falling off the counter is guaranteed to be seen 10 million times.
1,000%.
One of the biggest problems with this mad dash for go viral, get seen, get hits, get views, is that doesn't at all speak to the quality of the product, right? I mean, the product could be shit.
I mean, most times it is. It's one of those things where you can't predict the kind of crap that's going to be things that people like to see.
Right.
Because people try to recreate certain things where they're like, you know what? I saw, this old lady. There was a video of a really big girl trying on these heels and standing on a coffee table, and everyone expected her to fall through the coffee table, and she didn't. But stepping off of it, she fell and hit the side, and she was rolling around for 5 minutes, and everyone, I almost peed my pants when I saw that. And then after that, there was a bunch of big girls trying to get up in really, really big heels, trying to fall down and try to recreate the same time. We saw that one time. It was just this one girl, and that was it.
Right.
You know, like that quota was already filled for big girls hitting themselves and hurting themselves. And like you said, it's one of those things where like you got to make your own path, and you gotta see through it to the end. And if it's at the end and you can become viral, then you do. But if not, then you try something else. You got to just keep going until something happens, right?
One of the industries that rarely goes viral is stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy, when it does go viral, it happens from time to time. There's that video of a comedian that happens to be talking about something that socially is really big at the moment.
Yep.
But one thing that did happen was stand-up comedians shutting down hecklers, embarrassing a heckler, right? This happened a couple of times, and then what you saw was then every third comedian beat the crap out of this and beat it into the ground to where there were dozens of these videos of stand-up comedians dealing with hecklers where it got exhausting. It got to the point where I was saying, is anyone actually just doing material and telling jokes in comedy clubs anymore? Or is it just calling people an a-hole in the front row because that's what everyone was doing, so desperately trying to go viral?
Well, I mean, it's the original spark that starts the fire, right? And as RJ mentioned, I mean, you want to build a larger following. You want people who are actually invested, emotionally invested in what it is that you're doing. And if you're just copying something you've already seen, right? It's not an original spark anymore. You're just now just recreating something. And as soon as you say the words recreating, it's really not likely that it's going to go viral at that point because it's a been there, done that game.
What's his name? King Batch. King Batch recreated almost all the material that he did originally, and now he's beating us for auditions. And
Who's that?
King Batch is a comedian who he started on Vine, and he what he did actually, the biggest thing that he did was he recreated a Denzel Washington video, and he had a really good impersonation of him.
Right.
And it was him and like a bunch of his friends who did the same impersonations. His just happened to be funnier.
Well, you know,
but it was a recreation.
Yeah, but I would say, okay, it's a recreation, but that's an impression. So I could see that being an impression of something going. But I think that people smell a copycat, right? So it's one thing if you're doing an impression of something and people think that's a great impression. I think that the public can smell a fake. They can smell desperation. You know, for instance, there was a comedian / actress a couple of years ago who had a really huge viral video with her shaming fat people.
Oh, I know her.
Yeah.
I think we all know.
And millions of people saw it, and she got media. She got worldwide media, went on news shows and was interviewed by magazines, and everyone talked about it. And then her next video, she tried to insult somebody else. Didn't have the same thing, and the media wasn't there, and the press wasn't there because they started to go, okay, we get it. You got attention the first time. Now you're just blatantly pandering to do the same thing twice.
But that kind of brings back to your question: is going viral always a good thing? Because that actually wasn't a positive reaction to that video.
It's true. Yeah, it was
and
mostly
there was
negative.
actually there was a mimicry. And speaking of mimicry, there was actually a mimic of that video done by an LA comic called David So Comedy that was actually in many ways kind of even more hilarious than the original and actually got more views than the original.
Yeah.
So, but it was a copycat video that was sort of leveraging one to do the next. And
But much like I said, the impression video, a parody video can do that, right? Parody videos, like any kind of a parody or impression or satire, a lot of times can transcend the original content, right? So especially online.
If you're going to go viral, at least have a follow-up act. I guess would be the first thing.
You can't be a one-trick
I would say that's definitely a good idea, right? To have that. Now, Jackie, this show is a digital show. It airs on demand first, and then it goes around the world on different on-demand platforms, not in a traditional format, not in the traditional broadcasting format. You've worked a lot in on-demand and digital format and everything like that. I mean, was it because that was an avenue that you could really sink your teeth into, or was it, thinking ahead and you going, no, this is the future, this is where I'm going to go? Because you've had success doing that.
Well, the thing that made that particular project fun was that it was actively trying to merge a couple of different mediums, actually a live stage medium with the world of on-demand. So to take the sort of the energy and the feeling of being on stage and tape a show for on-demand. Because we're talking about digital today, but every medium has its own challenges, and one of the challenges of the theater medium is sort of a stagnating audience as people go to other things for entertainment. And we were wondering if you could sort of capture the same essence of that if you could bring that theater experience into someone's home, because digital has that advantage of being like right there at your laziest moment, accessible to you.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting way to try and merge two very opposite things together.
Well, you know, we're talking about going viral, or we're talking about, you know, the internet or whatever, but it does seem in so many ways, and I've said this before, that the future, especially of television, is going to be on demand. It's going to be digital, it's going to be on demand. We've seen the popularity of Netflix and Amazon Prime and these services coming up. You know, I think, how long is it before traditional television as we know it, broadcast television as we know it, is replaced by a la carte digital on-demand programming?
So like as big as that is, there's also a bigger premium now on live stuff and watching live, like watching the Oscars together or watching sports together.
True.
Because we're losing that, you know, as things become on demand, then we lose the togetherness of it. Like, I don't know, watching WKRP in Cincinnati at the same time and being like, oh, that was great. Did you watch that last night? Yeah, I did. When you can watch that whenever you want.
Water cooler talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
You lose that. I guess the water cooler is you know, on Twitter now as people watch live stuff.
Social media.
Yeah.
Right?
So.
Well, that is it, right? Social media has replaced the water cooler. Now, we all used to, the next day, go in and say, did you watch that last night when JR got shot? And now you post on Facebook, oh my God, who finished watching the whole first season of Daredevil? And everyone, don't tell me yet, asshole, I haven't finished it, right? It's that similar thing.
It's interesting what you're saying, though, about the on-demand thing, because in broadcast television, what they're seeing is that when they get the daily numbers right after a show airs, they're not impressive. If they wait 7 days and collect all that, you know, on-demand stuff, the numbers jump significantly. And if they wait a whole month, they're basically back up to the original numbers that television used to have on a single broadcast.
Yeah.
So the total numbers are the same. The problem that they're having is that along that chain, you stop monetizing. So the viewership is the same, but the amount of money coming in for viewership is not the same.
Right.
That's absolutely true. You have to also look at how far we've come when it comes to broadcast television. Okay, so I'm old enough, I don't think anyone else here is, but I'm old enough to have been around when there were 3 channels on television. And I remember the big deal of getting cable TV. I remember being one of the first people to get cable TV. But I can give you a quick number. If we go to the Tonight Show, for instance, in the 1970s, the average viewership of any given night of the Tonight Show was over 37 million people watching the Tonight Show every night. Today, 3 million people watch it. There's so many choices. It's not that people think the Tonight Show sucks now compared to then.
Rearranged.
It's now there's not only are there 500 channels, but there's also 500 options online. There's, you know, so many different choices out there. People can say there's video games, but there were always video games. You could have played Atari while the Tonight Show was on back then. But I'm talking about that's how many channels there are, and that's also how much people are watching things on your Netflix, on your Amazon, on YouTube, right? I mean, this is something that years ago, artists like yourself, I mean, we're only talking about 8 years ago you wouldn't have had. You know, you've had luck on YouTube,
Yeah.
you know, with finding an audience there that rivals some TV shows, especially in Canada. Right?
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's almost like there is too much choice. So I don't even think people are aware of the options out there. So that's, I
Could
guess.
you imagine 37 million people tuning into what you do every day, every week?
And then it was just Johnny smoking and laughing,
Yeah.
basically, for an hour and a half, which
Yeah.
is genius.
I mean, that still happens on social media today. It's called Snapchat.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, so that's it, right? Is Snapchat is great. It's 30 seconds, though, right?
I mean, it's still
But-
30 seconds within like 10 videos of people just posting maybe the most idiotic things you've ever seen, but people still watch it.
Yeah, because it's 30 seconds, though. Do you see people going online, 37 million people going online for a half an hour and watching the same thing regularly? Not that crazy video where RJ, you know, punches a cat. Do you have...
Which is coming out soon, by the way. Thank you.
I do. I think I call that Netflix, and I don't think it's half an hour. I think it's binge watching it 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Right? I think that House of Cards was a great first example of that, about when people said, oh, this will never work. This will never, people won't want to sit down and just watch an entire season of something.
Was
And
that the
then they
first
do.
time they put up 13 episodes all at once? Was that the first, like, of a premiere, never before seen series?
And
was House of Cards?
of their own produced work, yes,
House of
yes,
Cards,
it was. And and when they first launched the idea and just were speaking about the idea, people had a very negative reaction to it, right? Why would you put all your content out there at once? What are people going to come back for? And what they've seen is that yes, actually, people do want to sit down and they do want to binge watch for 2.5 hours on a Saturday afternoon. And I think that while you might not see 37 million people going to one broadcast television show anymore, it's because people want tailored, unique content that's specific to them. So that 37 million is being chopped up into smaller segments and being fed content that is just more specific to their age, their interests, when they're going to be watching this content. So that 37 million might be interested in award shows, but now they want to see small snippets of behind the scenes and up close and personal with the artists, and they want to get a different view from it that I think that technology allows them to engage in a much more intimate way. So I think that you're still getting large numbers of people, but it's being segmented, and people want something that's tailored and exclusive and unique, as opposed to somebody sitting and smoking a cigarette for half an hour or an hour on live TV kind of thing. I mean, I think the Oscars this year was the lowest amount of viewers who have ever watched the Oscars was this year. It was their lowest viewership.
Really?
Yeah.
But we have to wait a week and see all the people maybe who PVR'd it.
But you're right. You know,
I mean, to build on that though, the reason, but you were right, like, you know, the viewership was so low, but because of social media, right at the end, the viewership spiked, only because all the people in the
True, people were following
Right.
along in different ways.
They
So
were
it
following
wasn't just the
along.
TV eyeballs, it was the
Exactly.
people streaming, the people tweeting.
Right.
Well,
and
and
then,
in this year's Oscars, for those that may not know, there was controversy because the right award was given to the wrong movie, and so a lot of people who weren't watching the Oscars suddenly tuned in when social media blew up with everyone talking about what had just happened.
Right.
Or maybe they were recording it at home on their digital, you know, on their DVRs or whatever, and they suddenly went, "Oh, I got to go see this," right? And that did happen. Suddenly, the viewership spiked in those final moments, right?
Right. So the segment she's talking about, like, it's just more so like how people wanted to view them. They didn't want to sit on the couch and just kind of like watch these boring Oscars. It's more so as they're cooking, as they're like, you know, at the gym, as they're just kind of like on the subway, or as they're just walking a dog or whatever, to be able to pop their phone open and go to like maybe 6 different apps and see them from 6 different angles, kind of going, did that really happen? And checking it that way. That's, you know, that's something that's really taking a big turn in how we view
and when
everything.
something sensational does happen on a show like that, then you look at just the views on that clip.
Right.
You probably easily get to millions and millions of views.
I would agree with that.
I think if like back to you, what you said about like House of Cards and whatever, if you know people are going to be binge watching it, I think it changes how you present the content.
Right.
Like when I do like the
Cliffhangers.
cliffhangers and just like little, it just becomes smarter. And I try to, like, if I'm doing like my YouTube thing, I have 7 episodes up. So I do a thing where if you want to watch it just once a week when it comes out, you'll get it. But if you want to watch them all back to back, you'll probably notice little things that you wouldn't. So it's just the audience's habits change, so the content has to change with it.
Yeah, I could see that. Now, part of what we just said, we're talking about, you know, video on demand, especially TV series on demand. But here's something, and you know a lot about this. We talk about House of Cards and people binge watching, but it's not enough to put that TV series up there and say, here's, say, 13 hours of material you should watch. Now you've also got to have the social media tie-in that gets people talking and gets them interested and gets them tweeting about it to each other. It's not enough just to have the series. I've found also that there's this is when advertising goes into a different category. It's not just putting an ad in a paper or putting posters up in the subways or what have you. Now it becomes they're trying to get you to talk about it on social media. They're putting out their own hashtags and things like that, right?
Yeah, and you have to engage your audience in between seasons for regular broadcast television. I don't know if anybody remembered when one of the stars of Game of Thrones had released an Instagram photo of stones in a heart, and it alluded to a character that everybody thought was going to be coming in that season. When that character didn't come on board that season, there was a backlash, right? Everybody said, well, you alluded to it by putting this photo together, it has to happen. But at least there was conversation happening, and that's the point, right? There were people talking about the season as it was being made and keeping that momentum going during what would normally be a lag period for those shows and for that character and for the broadcast station. So I think that now we see an opportunity to almost keep the conversation, but keep the show almost going through the perspective of the actors, through the perspective of the producers on social media, and it's giving them additional leverage. But if they don't do it, they will fall flat on their face.
1000%.
They genuinely will.
Yep, there are shows like, especially, I'm sorry, Game of Thrones, building on that. Like, I'm a big Game of Thrones fan. So that big lag in between, I never watch shows while they're happening because I'm just too busy. Like, I was the guy who waited till Smallville was over and then just took some time and watched all of Smallville. And that for me was like, okay, cool, I got it over with. I saw it. All right, then I made my commentary on what I thought about it. It took like, 10 seasons, 10 years. And I waited, binge watched the whole entire thing.
And your hair grew that entire
exactly.
time.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, if I don't want to see somebody, I got to just leave my head a little bit. But Game of Thrones, it has me enthralled throughout the entire year. And it's only a few episodes. And as angry as I am about like having to wait, I wait, I get the updates, I see a meme, and I will look at that meme 10,000 times with different captions on it, laugh, send it to like 20 people, and still just be on the edge kind of going, season premiere, everybody needs to just go away. I shut off social media so I can just watch it and kind of be like, get my fix and sit on the couch kind of going, damn. I waited for that, it was satisfying.
Well, you know, the unique thing about this episode is everybody here isn't just someone who watches and observes digital media or entertainment or social media. We're all also content creators, right? And so like when this show was first being put together, you know, one of the things you told me was you need to have your online presence, but more than that, you need to interact because I've been around long enough in this industry to have gone, well, no, I'll do the traditional advertising route and we'll put this ad on here. And my idea of social media was, well, let's put some ads up, let's put some pictures up. And you said, that's not good enough. You need to start asking people questions, get them to interact, get them to talk. And something that, I mean, I like to think I know social media, but it was just wasn't something I thought about. Where you went, just put a question out there and get people to answer it. That's your advertising.
It is. It is because you are your advertising. You are your best advertising vehicle. And people are watching this because they want to get to know you and see what kind of personality you bring to. No, but it's true, right? So why not use that as leverage in the social space? I mean, I think people sometimes forget that social media is social and it's based on communities, and every platform has its own community and needs to be treated in its own specific way. You wouldn't treat Instagram followers the way you would treat Facebook followers. But that's the true magic, is when you specifically respond to somebody who's left a comment on your page. You've now engaged that person and created a connection with them that a simple advertisement will never do. And that is going to leave the mark in their mind that makes them want to watch the next episode, as opposed to just seeing a billboard or seeing an advertisement in a magazine and then flipping the page and sort of having like a faint memory of what you may or may not have seen or may not have absorbed. But those moments, that's the true magic of social media, is being able to connect with people in a way that a billboard never would have.
A great example of that is a group called Body Rock, which does fitness.
Yeah.
And they started with free online videos. They've moved to a pay-per-view service, or a subscription service rather, but they actually have an internal Facebook group. Anybody in this group? It is crazy how supportive this group is. You've got people all over the world doing the same workouts and like posting really personal stuff about their lives, and then immediately being swarmed by 100 of people like telling them that they're doing great. And basically, I think I've never seen anything negative in that group, but I think you would be thrown out immediately if you did.
Well, and there's something to be said about making your audience part of the project. That's something I'm seeing more and more. Adam Carolla made a movie called Road Hard a couple of years ago that he crowdfunded.
Right.
And some of the people that funded that got parts in the movie.
Right.
You know, small speaking parts in the movie, which at face value sounds like a terrible idea for anyone that's ever had to cast a movie.
Right.
Or anything like that. You know, to do it based on, you know, monetary input sounds like a bad idea. But somehow they made it work, and it worked, and it did help fund the movie, you know. And I'm finding more and more people, you know, you work in professional wrestling.
Yes.
You want to talk about an industry that really knows how to marry old technology and new technology and really get the fans to participate in it, it's that one.
Well, actually, like back to your theater environment, like the fans are a part of the show.
Yeah.
Especially when they throw beer and spit on me. So like they're in on it. So
Yeah.
that's like come and like play along in this idiocy.
Yeah.
And I think that's good for whatever content you do, is to be inclusive enough to say. Just
Yeah, but I do
enjoy
not
this.
encourage anyone here to spit on me or throw beer.
But if you want to, like
No,
it's not
no.
that you feel that.
No, the views and opinions by R.J. Skinner are not necessarily.
I was gonna say, I hope you guys just aim straight though. Aim straight.
But I mean, let's talk for a second about money. Let's talk for a second about that, because here is one thing that people haven't thought of that I was looking at. Okay, so Netflix, lots of original series. Amazon, lots of original series and doing great. Okay, subscription-based service. With Amazon, it's something like 40 to 70 million people worldwide subscribing to the Prime network. Netflix has 60
Everybody.
to 80 million people
Just everybody.
Is it that low?
subscribing.
No,
Is
I
that
think it's
low?
like over 100.
Yeah,
million.
I thought it was
It's
over
100
100 million at this point.
Okay, over 100 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a service that has the money to pay you to do a series, 13 episodes of a series, that can go up there, pay the cast, celebrities in the cast, in many cases, House of Cards
Kevin Spacey.
being an example, okay, and put that content out there for people to watch who are paying $10, per month or whatever it is to subscribe. But here's one place where everyone is, for lack of a better term, a little screwed. Netflix and Amazon don't have one thing going for them, and that is no syndication. In fact, they haven't even come up with a way to syndicate this yet, because
Well, as soon as they
why
do,
would
it's done.
Netflix or Amazon give up this product that they have that is exclusive to their network? Why would they give that up to be shown on pay TV for years and years and years, when keeping it exclusive keeps the subscribers? But the one thing that that the people that sign on to do those series don't have is the syndication royalties that actors and creators are used to.
Also, it condenses how many buyers. Instead of selling to a bunch of buyers, now you sell to Netflix and you're done.
Yeah, that's true.
So your revenue is definitely affected.
Yeah, because you don't sell into the world market, you sell to Netflix.
You have one buyer.
Yeah.
And as the one buyer becomes more and more powerful, what they're able to offer, because they're their only buyer,
becomes bigger and bigger.
gets lower and lower, and you sort of become dependent. We all become dependent on this one entity, to the point where now the big, like some of the even the BDUs or broadcasters are partnering with Netflix to make co-productions,
Yeah.
like Bell or Chorus or anybody.
CW.
Yeah, actually partnering with Netflix to make a project. But I sort of wonder who's if it's really a partnership. Like, I still feel like Netflix has a lot of power in those relationships.
Sure.
Like, they're still not sharing data. So now you've partnered with Netflix on a show, and Netflix still won't tell you how many people or who is watching your show.
Which is interesting, because networks can't wait to tell you.
They're very transparent.
Broadcast networks cannot wait to tell you how many millions of people watched their TV show this week or last night, and with the digital platforms, it's not transparent. But content creators know this. I don't just mean actors, those that direct and produce and write things. You're used to the syndication rights. You're used to thinking that something is going to be around for 20 years and you're going to continue to sell it for 20 years. So this is, I hate to use an old cliche, but it's the wild, wild west in terms of selling your content, because we really don't know where the money goes after that initial sale, right? With the way technology is changing.
Like Gilligan's Island is the most successful television show
Yeah.
ever, which is insane because it's weird, but it is.
And
because
it was
of
2 years,
syndication.
right? Wasn't it only
Right.
2 years, maybe 3 seasons
Yeah,
or something?
just solely because of syndication.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. But then if syndication dies, then I assume, I don't know, the content of the shows will change, and it'll be a little more like flash in the pan. And the other thing with the on-demand subscription services is that they let basically the showrunners kind of do whatever they want. They don't have to fit it into this broad thing, because they don't really need everyone to watch it anymore.
And they don't have to adhere to advertisers.
Right.
And that's the main thing when it comes to producing content. You're right about that. Show creators have way more freedom when it comes to the on-demand platforms or digital platforms. But, because a lot of people don't realize when they'll talk about broadcast TV, they'll go, well, why did they do that? Why did they change this character's gender or race? Or why did they water down this thing, or why did that fight scene seem lame, or why was the love scene pathetic or whatever? And they don't realize that broadcast TV is still in the hands of the advertisers. Subscription-based services don't have to worry about that much. But then we also go back to, it's still a money talk, right?
But the creator of House of Cards did a talk at the Toronto Screenwriting Festival a couple of years ago, and he said it was the most fun he'd ever had because they basically just gave him a bunch of money and said, make a show, and nobody questioned any of his creative choices.
I mean, they wouldn't, right? Because if at that point you make the content, people who want to see it will go to it, and there's no one who. You're not going to complain about a show that you made yourself watch.
And Netflix wasn't pretending to know anything about it. They were like, we've never produced anything, go
boom.
play.
The freedom can be great. Years ago, I remember doing an appearance on a TV show where I was doing stand-up, and the producers came to me and said, we have to cut part of your material. And I said, why? And they said, you make a joke about one of our sponsors. Right? And I had no idea. It was just some joke that I made, and they went, it's not going to happen on this show.
So the creator of Grey's Anatomy once said something that I thought was interesting, which is what she likes about being on Netflix is that people can fall in love with the show from the beginning.
Yeah.
So you might not have syndication, but I can go to Netflix right now and see House of Cards from season 1, episode 1, and fall in love with the characters and the arc. So maybe you don't necessarily have to write episodes that create a show that's very episodic and things sort of live in their own world and you never really need to see the episode before or after. But because of this new format, they have access to the entire arc and can fall in love with the show from the beginning. So you have people constantly falling in love with shows that have been around for now 5 seasons, right? And this can be an opportunity to gain audiences in a new kind of way that is different but maybe better than syndication. And also, you might not have advertisers, but you still have reviews, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the online space. And I don't just mean people talking about the show on social media. I mean, I won't watch something on Netflix that's less than 4 stars. Right? I just don't need to, right? I don't need to spend my time.
Less than
I really
4 stars?
don't.
No.
4 stars?
High standards.
I know, I
Very
do. I have
high.
high standards. I don't have a lot of time for TV, so
I
if I'm going to watch,
appreciate
it's going to
that.
be 4 stars or higher, right?
I would have never seen Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, like come on, man. 4 stars?
I don't trust those cavemen. I'm sorry.
But
I
you
don't
are
trust the
still
average
responsible.
person watching Netflix who's pissed off one day to decide my programming for me. Because there's movies I know that I've loved that are Oscar worthy, and I've looked at the customer reviews and they've been 2 stars, and I've gone,
Listen.
that's because a bunch of mouth-breathing jackholes watch this. I'm sorry.
Most people on Netflix come from America and they voted for Trump, so I'm not going to trust them with no. But like, oh, this is 4 stars.
Every episode of The Apprentice has 4 stars on Netflix. I just want to point that out.
You know, when you read like a restaurant review and they're like, oh, well, we got there late because we couldn't find a babysitter. And you're like, this is your problem.
Yeah.
This is you have a malfunction with you.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do.
That's the thing with Amazon. That's like sometimes I notice the movie reviews on Amazon. They're like, I had 2 stars. The movie arrived late in the mail. And I go, that's not Spielberg's fault, you jerk. I mean, you had a bad day and your mailman sucks.
I think you have to, in general, take anything you read on the internet with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's
To
getting more
me,
and
that's
more
the biggest
ridiculous.
problem with the internet, period, is taking too
Like, for the
much
most part.
to task.
I'm so busy like online, just kind of like, or like just making my own content, or like just being busy. When I finally do go online, I have to remember, I'll check a certain story. There's a story about a Korean man suing a Korean woman about she made ugly babies, so he was suing her.
This was
and to
this
me,
is old.
Okay, listen, I find out things last. I don't judge me. All right? I'm busy, Jackie.
I mean,
So
years.
I read it, and I was like, God damn. And I read the whole entire thing, just captivated, kind of going, what? And then someone was kind of like, you're an idiot. It's actually fake and blah, blah. And I was like, well, I didn't have time to double
was me
check to
that
go
wrote
do
that,
the
by the
research
way.
and that kind of stuff. And I was more of like, it was on the internet. So I was like, well, this must be true, man. They got articles, they got all these video clips. And I was like, okay, you know what? Fine. I got, at some point, it was a little fishy. But when I first see it online, it instantly got my attention. And I went through the entire thing.
Yeah. Well, of course, it was fascinating and
Right.
Let me
terrifying.
say this. Let's go back to the money thing real quick, okay? Because LSMFT, Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, right?
That was not what I thought that was.
Well, if we go back to the 1950s and the late 40s, then advertising was product placement on radio.
Right.
So I could be having my conversation with R.J. Skinner and say, well, I don't know about you, but when I smoke Lucky Strikes. LSMFT Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. And this is how money was made. How long is it before when it comes to digital entertainment, when it comes to on-demand, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, CISO, insert YouTube, which is producing original content, right? How long is it before product placement makes its way back?
It's already happening.
It's
It's
there,
already here,
It's
man.
done.
And I mean, I don't mean in the obvious ways, like I wear Strelson and I'm wearing a Fossil. I'm talking about how long is it before you're watching that on-demand, you're watching a House of Cards or a Daredevil, and in the middle of it, somebody says, hey, let's get out of here and go have ourselves a pack of Luckies, right? I think, this is the thing. Never discount the power of advertising. Never. So we may do away with traditional advertising, as in we'll be back right after these messages, but I think that's going to be the return. That's where advertising is going to go. You're going to see on-demand programming where the advertising finds its way as product placement into the programming.
And it has to too, because there's becoming, thanks to YouTube and these pop-up ads, people are becoming, the new term is adlergic to it, and people are becoming resistant to advertising. So that advertisers actually have to be encouraged to get craftier, or will lose their dollars completely.
So
Right.
to build on that, it's one of those things where, like, as we're advancing technology-wise and we're advancing with our content, advertisers, if they stay the same that they are now, they'll lose out. So I think when it comes down to money and advertisement, it's already happening with certain short films, and so you go to certain festivals, and you can tell that there's certain films that are funded by certain brands where they give specific filmmakers money to make films that happen to feature their brands. And then you're sitting there thinking, why is this film even relevant? It's not. It's just more so they got smarter. They gave this group of filmmakers this money to kind of be like, okay, you can make your film about somewhat whatever you want, but you strongly need to include this product, or strongly need to include our models or our shoes and that's happening, and it's going to happen more and more and more. Is more so like now the money's going to come from the advertisers, and they're going to strongly kind of be like, okay, well, we'll give you money to make your show, but you just have to include this chunk of.
That's
And
what I
that's
mean.
affecting
Movies,
the viral content too.
Right.
Movies have been doing this for a long time. We've all
And
seen
music
that.
videos.
What?
Yeah, and music
music
videos.
videos.
Music videos. But we've been seeing it in movies for years, right? Somebody reaches over and they pick up the Pepsi and they have the drink. Television has not shied away from it, but it's avoided this because you cut to the ads. You cut to the ads, and so there's no product placement within the show because they didn't pay for that, right? But I remember watching recently an episode of Empire.
Yeah.
The entire
Just
episode.
thinking the same thing.
Was it 4 stars? Is that what's going on?
It got 4 stars
I'm
on
pretty sure it's 4.5,
Netflix.
I'm just gonna say.
She tuned in. But Empire, I believe that whole episode was an ad for Pepsi.
Pepsi, yeah.
Yeah.
Pepsi has done a phenomenal job integrating themselves. And there's still a lot of people who don't realize how much Pepsi sponsors Empire.
Right.
Exactly
And
what I said.
it's integrated now.
1000%.
And that's the only way it can happen, because people don't want to watch commercials. And this is part of the reason why people are turning off their broadcast television and turning to YouTube and Vimeo to watch their shows, because they don't want to see these ads anymore.
I don't
And it
even
gets
have
annoying
cable no
even just
more.
having it pop up. But I'm waiting for the day when you start clicking on those videos and get to go straight to the e-commerce store
buy it.
and buy that Olivia Pope outfit or
that's-
whatever it is, right? You're going to get that. You're going to find that.
Already
So
on YouTube, if you look at YouTube, like if you see like a video and you see like a little bubble pop up, and if you go over it, kind of like, oh, Zara or H&M, like
Yeah.
it already pops. So, and if you click it, it will take you somewhere.
No, we already do
the
that.
Lizzie Bennet Diaries did this. When the
Right,
original
right.
sort of story, like a Carmilla, that's told like through somebody through their webcam, but it was actually Pride and Prejudice done as a narrative, 2-camera web hosty feel, and they not only embedded Samsung products as the characters were using them, but you could actually click on the outfits and go and shop and buy the outfits that they were wearing. And that was like
It's already a
5
thing,
years
yeah,
ago.
yeah.
I do love to listen to old 50s radio shows. I like to sit and listen to it, but I'm always amused at the advertising. No one minds it. No one minded it then. But it is interesting to hear it, where two people talking about something completely innocent, and then all of a sudden, I like that jacket you're wearing, Ward. Well, thank you. This is Strelson. And then the conversation continues. Let me ask you guys, would you trade traditional advertising, cutting away to 2.5 minutes of commercials, to have that in your show, or would it take you out of the show? Would it take you out of whatever you're watching to have someone suddenly go, would you like an ice cold Coca-Cola?
That's even like the Texaco Star Theater presents Milton Berle. You couldn't say the name of the show without saying Texaco.
Right?
Sometimes it's nice to have it out front and be obvious and say, well, yeah, like they pay for the show. I would like to do the show. I need money to do the show. What do you want from me? But I think like with digital media and people getting used to personalities on social media, it's easier to integrate the brands more cleverly that way.
Well, because it can just be picking up something and holding it and drinking. You don't even have to say it. Right? You can pick it up and hold it and drink it. I do think you're right. You're going to get to the point where, I mean, we already have it on social media where celebrities put the photo of them on Instagram wearing something, and then they tag the brand in that photo. And you can click on that, find the brand, and go buy it. But it's only a matter of time before you're able to pause the TV show and find that brand and go, whoa, this shirt, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
I would even encourage that in a way.
Sure.
Because the struggle right now is how do you get enough money to make content? Because right now a lot of the content is moving to sort of a purchase content model where you have to make it and then sell it, which is very difficult to get your budget up. Like you need money up front, and that is what the sort of struggle of new creators is. Like you don't want to make a show and then sell it to Netflix. You want Netflix to pay for your show.
And then give you the,
and if Netflix won't, then if a brand will, well then great.
Sure.
The thing with the rise of bloggers, though, is that now we're hearing a lot of talk about authenticity, artistic integrity, and you see bloggers coming to the forefront and saying, I'm just letting you guys know that this post is sponsored by so-and-so.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a line there. I understand for maybe like a heavily produced content like Netflix, you want to integrate it, people expect that there's going to be a level of advertising there. But maybe with a YouTube produced show or a Vimeo produced show, where is the line there between having integrity and being authentic and selling out and having people slam you in the comment section for selling out and just building an entire show for your sponsors, right? Is that it's no longer for the viewer, the people who it should be for, it's for the sponsor. And I think that people with comment sections and reviews are able to now voice their distaste for that, right?
I've talked to musicians about this idea of selling out. And there was a time in the 60s and the 70s that selling out was an actual thing. It was an actual bad term, right? But what's changed is that selling out used to be the difference between this mansion and that mansion for an artist, right? But now selling out, meaning product placement or sponsorship, it's the difference between getting on air and not. You know, I mean, I always say it's called show business, and sometimes business is the most important word there.
It's also interesting that now selling out, in a way, actually gets you status.
Yes.
Because now if a brand wants to pay for you, it's like skateboarders. Like if you're being sponsored as a skateboarder, that's not selling out as a skateboarder, that's making it.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that more now in, I find, like creative content, where it's like if you can get Pepsi to sponsor and all you have to do is put in some Pepsi cans, well, then you've made it. You got a sponsor. Good for you.
But it's true.
But
I mean,
I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that seems
But
to be
it's-
the street cred. It seems to actually be putting it up rather than down.
But Jackie, in the world of, say, a skateboarder, it doesn't change how he does a flip or ride something, right? In the world of television, it can change the actual art itself.
Yeah.
It can change the script, right? So how much do you allow that sponsor to lead the way in that way?
30 years ago, there was a movie called Leonard Part 6 with Bill Cosby. One of the big criticisms when the movie came out, besides the fact that people hated the movie itself, was that they called it one big Coke commercial. That Coke appeared so much throughout it. And at the time, Bill Cosby was a spokesperson for Coke. But that Coke was so predominantly in this movie that it seemed like one big commercial, right?
It was.
Right.
But now commercials and content are sort of becoming more mixed up. Like there was a video that went viral, successfully so, about this charming deaf man in a village, and everybody learned how to sign. So he spent a day walking around, and everybody in the village signed. It was like, this is not a very successful commercial because I can't totally remember the brand, but I think it was TELUS. You know, so they were like, it was all about communication and breaking boundaries. But it was clickbait from the sort of sentiment of this little gimmick. Do you know what I mean? So they're
Well, I got one for you. The Oscars, a few years ago, Ellen DeGeneres took a selfie with a bunch of celebrities. It looked completely natural and impromptu and everything like that, but it was a commercial for Samsung. That wasn't her phone. That was a Samsung phone, and that Samsung paid for them to do that selfie.
But
Right?
regardless, I mean,
That's the most brilliant, I think, product placement ever, because it didn't seem like a commercial. It actually seemed like an impromptu moment in the middle of the show.
so
right?
in my, like, I also like old school radio shows simply because I like to hear the stories that they would tell. You know, like they would be going through, and then every single week you'd have to tune into, you know, continue and hear the story, and it would come down to subtlety. So like when you go back and you listen to that now, like it'd just be that conversation, and you just out of nowhere, like you're just kind of lost, and then you're like, okay, cool, and you don't even care about what he just more so like hit me the story. So like now when you see any kind of advertisement that's blatantly in your face that takes you away from why you're watching the content in the first place, all of a sudden it aggravates me. So if I'm looking at if we're here and we're talking about the show, and then all of a sudden you turn, you know, and I'm really engaged into what we're talking about, and then you kind of just show this Coke and you give me like an Abercrombie smile, I'm immediately like this douche.
Yes, but that's about being clever, because you do want to, if you're going to go that route, you do want to.
Yeah, but
Hide it.
that's where I
Yeah.
would say advertising, you know, if it's like the Ellen thing with the phone, like it was so subtle. People were like, man, her arms must stretch forever. I'm like, obviously, anyone with a brain know that she didn't really take that selfie. It was a crew, right? But
Right.
that's where it comes down to. It's so subtle to the point where like it didn't matter. I was more of like, that's cool. Moving on. I wasn't aggravated. I wasn't aggravated by it.
Okay, what
I liked
about
it.
what about the professional wrestler? If tomorrow you could have Jackson Triggs Vineyard
Yeah.
stamped across your bum while you're in the ring,
I guess I would first of all ask, what are they paying me? Would be a good question. I think.
would you lose your fans for doing that?
Would
they
probably
care?
not. You mean the people spitting on me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not spitting on him anymore. I don't care for his ilk.
What? Wine snob? How dare you? Patooey, sir.
I guess there's
Start
a way.
throwing
There's
wine.
a way to do it, and there's a way not to do it. I mean, it is nice to be like upfront about it, like comedians in cars getting coffee. It's presented by whatever, Acura, whatever it is. He's not hiding it. I know it. He works it into the content of the show. I understand that they're paying for the show to happen.
Right.
It's not offensive to me. It doesn't bother me at all. I hate being worked into something and being like
Really?
lied to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where I'm like, and then I get hit with it. So I prefer it being out front. But I guess that also depends on what content you have and how flexible it is and how flexible the brands are with working with you.
Yeah.
Maybe Jackson Triggs isn't, too happy with me getting my ass kicked every Saturday.
That's true.
You know?
It's what it all comes down to is that we have the ability now as entertainers, as content creators, to be seen by more people than ever before. We do have that ability to be seen by 37 million people. That number that I talk about. However, somebody got to pay for it, right? There is the occasional person in their bedroom with no budget who's getting seen by millions of people. But in general, quality content has to be paid for by somebody, right? And a lot of times that means brand sponsoring, right?
And now brands are becoming content creators in their own right too, by the way, right? Now you can't just be sending out advertisements. You have to create something that is engaging or educational or entertaining, even if you're Oreo or your TD Canada Trust. I mean, the brands themselves are
Bell,
becoming...
let's talk day.
Right?
Right.
So
Right.
they themselves have to have a conscience now and work with charities and create content in and of themselves that is interesting. I'm not sure how effective it is because, again, we have a very educated audience now that is saying, oh, well, this is sponsored by Acura. Does that really make you now want to run out and buy an Acura car? I'm not entirely sure, but you do see the rise of brands becoming content creators in their own rights as well and trying to create YouTube channels that are interesting, banks creating investment channels and teaching millennials how to be investors and things like that. I know you're smiling because that seems a little ludicrous, but now you can't just have a commercial for TD Canada Trust. You actually have to have a YouTube channel that gives some sort of value back to
app.
their customers instead of just traditional advertising.
Yeah,
An
it needs to be a lot more
an interactive
engaging, right?
app
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something, right?
They have to engage people in a completely different way because we've moved past just sitting on the couch, actually just being fed, crap. Like now we have to be fed crap to feel motivated about ourselves, about, sitting on this couch doing nothing.
I got one for you. Okay, so we've talked about, digital content, creating digital content. We've talked about monetizing it, advertising, product placement. Let's talk about the time. Okay, so you've done a lot of YouTube videos. You've had a lot of success at it. You have as well. You know all about this. Web series. Okay, we have Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and CISO and these different Vimeo can put out a 30-minute to an hour-long show, but if you're making a web series nowadays and you want to be seen by millions, what is it? 5 minutes long, 10 minutes long, right? How long?
2.
2 minutes long?
If it goes over 2, it better be amazing.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I shut off things after 10 seconds sometimes.
Right.
Like, you got to do something really, really good.
Why can't we get people on YouTube to watch something for more than 2 minutes? Why can we get them to tune into Netflix and watch a half hour, but if I said I'm putting up a half hour sitcom on YouTube, people will go, get the hell out of here. I'm not watching that. Why?
Because I think the different mediums serve different functions sort of for your brain in a way. I've always said that sort of I feel like different mediums have stepped over. So maybe back in the day people sort of looked at art, they watched movies for stories, and then TV was the junk food. Remember, like early TV was always, it was very like episodic. It was very, you turn your brain off and tune out. It was like every episode was exactly the same. But now we've stepped over one. So now we look at IMAX and 3D movies and giant screens that are like in computer graphics as our visual. We binge watch shows that now can tell stories for hours and hours and hours. You can have stories that go for 15 hours and characters that get nuanced in depth forever. And then we turn to the internet for our junk food, our brain junk food. So we don't stay engaged on that level like we would on a different medium.
Yeah, it got so bad to the point where Vine was one of the most popular apps ever, and that was only 6 seconds.
Vine.
6 seconds.
Vine.
And if you did
6
anything
seconds.
that was, two
and it
Vines
seemed
that
like
took
its
12 seconds, it was
lifespan
too
was
much.
6 seconds
Yeah.
now, right?
It was.
Looking back at it.
And you still needed something amazing to keep you for 6
Yeah.
seconds.
If it wasn't funny within 2 seconds, you were gone.
Even Snapchat. Snapchat is something that still baffles me. I've been apologizing to women for decades for 30 seconds. And now apparently that's the time that everyone wants to spend with me. I don't understand it.
The world has come to you.
Yeah?
That's what that means.
Is that what it is? Literally?
Yes.
You
Now
can Snapchat it even.
Now people are just consuming media in like 1 second bites, right? Like think about how long it takes you to see 5 Instagram posts, right? That's just one swipe of a hand.
Right.
And so people's attention spans are shrinking like goldfish.
This 2 minutes,
right?
this guy.
And
2
they're
minutes.
distracted. They're so distracted too, right? You're swiping through Instagram while you're listening to a radio, while somebody's chattering off in your ear. You're consuming so much at the exact same time that like anything after 2 minutes and you're already distracted by something that was already sort of bright and flashy coming up over
There's
here.
Because like the consumer has the power. So like the remote control for me ruined movies.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to sit in a theater and like watch it how they want you to watch it.
Yeah, back in my day, I
But
was
now
stuck.
that I can pause it and I can leave and go to the bathroom and come back. Goodfellas is not the same if you take a dump in the middle of the movie. It's not. So
There's a Rodney Dangerfield joke where he says, my wife is so dumb, it takes her 90 minutes to watch 60 minutes. And I said, everyone takes 90 minutes to watch 60 minutes now. Of course you pause it and you leave and everything. You're absolutely right. The attention span has changed. But I still don't get that. A 2-minute YouTube video, but then you'll go on Netflix and you'll watch an hour-long show.
But
There
like
is
you said,
something-
it's the mediums. Like
Yeah,
certain
I
mediums, like
agree with
I don't
Jackie.
go on YouTube to go watch movies. I know you can, and
Right.
they expand. Remember, because before you couldn't even make YouTube videos a certain length, and then they were like, we're expanding the amount of time you can watch it.
Yeah.
And I still don't care. I don't go on YouTube to watch quality stuff.
You go
I
for
w-
quickies.
Exactly. I want to see something really fast, and then I'm out. Like YouTube's not my G spot for that.
But also,
right?
like back to the binge watching. There's people who will binge watch it and be glued to House of Cards.
Yeah.
But there's people who put it on for the whole weekend and they'll be doing their chores
Yeah.
while it's on, and they go, "I get
Sure.
the gist." So you have to serve both. You have to be like textured enough that if someone's watching it back to back, they get rewarded for it. But you have to be kind of general enough and episodic that people can tune in and out.
So, okay, talk to me about monetizing. Have you been able to monetize YouTube for yourself? Or is it just a place you've been able to? Because some people can monetize it, and then some people have used it to attract people to other things they do.
Yeah.
Right? In the stand-up comedy world, almost nobody monetizes YouTube. It's just a thing to satiate people that you hope gets them to your live shows. As a
So,
wrestler,
to monetize it on a personal level, like me, my account, and it's very difficult. When you look at what the actual monetization means, you need a tremendous amount of views to
Right.
even get
Yeah.
like $4 worth.
How does that work? What does it work? It's like if you get 1 million views, you get like $10.
I can't remember, but you don't get
Not even
paid
that.
until you get like $100 worth, and then they start
then they
paying
start
you.
paying you.
It's very difficult, but that's why like I'm partnered with the CBC. CBC is putting that on, and then like there's brand sponsorships and integration and stuff. So it's that as opposed to getting, just paid
Right.
via YouTube.
Right. So again, we're talking about product placement and sponsors.
Right.
Wow. So maybe you would have something written across your bum in your.
Look, if
your
anyone
tights.
out there would like to write something on my ass, this is totally up to them.
I think there's a few people in this audience who'll take you
Thank
up
you.
on that
And
right
I
now.
appreciate you for it.
There's people that might want to write things on your ass. They may not have the money that you're looking for, but
That
you
would be
know.
art.
Now that I think about it, there are other mediums that we're talking about that try to do the exact same thing as
Ass
Netflix.
writing?
Yeah, as Netflix and like the rest of them, and they have failed. So like one, for instance, is Crackle. Crackle does the exact same thing as Netflix, except they put advertisements in between while you're watching stuff. And as soon as those advertisements came up, Crackle almost went bankrupt because no one wants to be subjected to that.
It cuts to an ad during the middle of the
It cuts to an
content.
ad through the middle of it, and it's just one of those things where it's like, well, we're gonna do the same thing like Netflix, and we're gonna get all the advertisers from TV because they don't have the they can't go to Netflix.
Do they pay
so
a
come to us.
subscriber fee? I don't believe. does
Crackle,
Crackle pay a
Crackle is
subscriber
free, and then there's a premium for
Without the ads.
Without the ads, or like
Sure.
ads at the beginning or the end or something like that. So they're kind of like we
Much
we
like
win
Amazon.
all, yeah. So they're like we get best of both worlds, and they didn't because as soon as people were kind of like, no, I can just go to Netflix and just save myself the hassle. They did, and Crackle just no one wants to use Crackle, and then the other services that are like that. You know what I mean? So
It's an interesting, and I do want to point out that this show is seen on Crackle.
is it?
Yeah.
my name's RJ.
It's
Right on his ass.
But it's interesting to see where we're going because I've said this before. It never has it been cheaper to create content because what you were looking at here is 4K technology that we're shooting in. We're shooting in the highest definition quality TV you can get, right? Well, in a few years, this will be available on your phone. This will be available cheaply for
I'll
you
tell
to
you
buy.
right now, I got 4K on my iPhone right now. My
Yeah.
BlackBerry got it. Samsung
Right.
got it. So you're talking about like I think Jackie and I disagree with the whole, is getting cheaper. Like there's things that have definitely updated where
But
it makes
it-
it
but-
a lot easier and more accessible.
But just
But
look
when
at
it comes
it
down
as,
to the average filmmaker, it's still
It's still expensive, and what you're saying is that more people can make content, which also makes it more expensive
For-
because
That's-
the expense comes down to the competition now.
ding, ding, ding. That is exactly it. It's a problem in the fact that I always hear people say, and I say it, it's never been cheaper to create your own content. It's never been more feasible and possible to create your own content, and that's true. But there's also never been so much saturation as now. There's never been so much stuff out there. When I started in show business years ago, if you had a band, it was very expensive to put out an album. If you were a comedian, it was really expensive
course.
to get headshots, to get photos made, to get a demo tape, right? If you were trying to direct something, you had to buy a Super 8 camera and film and develop it. And it was very
If
difficult.
you got a feature film made, people were going to watch that feature film.
Yes, because there wasn't that much content out there. One of the
And because
it was so difficult and
there was
expensive.
Yeah.
yes, but also because there was many like layers of thought and process that went into
1000%.
it. You had to make sure that the was well written. You had to attract the producers. You had to attract things to it. There was like levels of content curation as well. And sometimes content curation isn't great, but if a record label can only put out one album, they're going to look at lots of bands and pick what they think is the best
Sure.
band. But if every band can just self-produce, every band thinks they're the best band.
Yeah.
So the curation is not happening on the production level. The curation happens after you're produced,
Yeah, so
which
no,
is
now-
a huge challenge to creators.
So now,
Right.
now that there's, like again, the competition is just making it much more difficult, and you're right, the saturation is all out there. So now, as we were thinking about, back in the day in the 90s and the 80s, and like they were picky, whatever, and now you have to be even pickier, and that makes it harder for us content creators because now
You
it's
need
like a
4
matter of like,
stars before anyone
Right.
watches you.
Exactly, it's crazy. So
Eric's
now
not even looking at you.
you're thinking right now like about 4K and whatever. I'm already thinking about shooting 8K because now I want to sit on like from a cinematography point of view, I want to sweep awards. I want to go to these film festivals and get them to notice me above everyone else who's now shooting like, 2.5 to 4 and all that kind of stuff. Like, I got to jump ahead now, but for me to get an 8K camera, now I'm sitting there thinking, God damn.
You don't need to do a movie in
But
4K.
really and truly, why I got to see the pores in the inside of your nose, man? Why?
You don't.
Which are
And
fantastic.
And no
by the
one's
way.
ever
I
gone
think
to
they
the
look
cinema and been
wonderful.
like, wow, this is a terrible movie. I hate these people.
Yeah.
But it's
No, I'm
so
high-fiving
clear.
Yeah. Oh my God. You know what? I really believe what she's saying because the whiteheads, I can see those whiteheads on her nose. I can see that. That's
Okay, but
believable.
now you're not putting the power in the hands of record producers and in the power in the hands of broadcasters. If you have to cut through noise, validation lives in the power of the viewer, right? And
the
I
viewer
think
has to
that's
see it
where
first.
that's where it should lie.
No, but the viewer has to see it first.
So
So
create something of value.
But they
No,
won't
there's
know
no
it's a
listen,
value unless they
these
see
viewers
it.
are sitting here thinking like, this guy falling down the stairs and breaking his leg in 10 places is funny. While comedians
It is
sitting there
pretty
busting.
funny.
Which is short-lived.
It is pretty
Okay.
Which
funny.
is short-lived.
But-
There's only so
but-
many laughing owl
But
videos
this guy,
out there.
okay, the Cash Me Outside girl, she's 13 years old. I just found out she's 13 years old. She getting a TV show. Ward, how long you trying to get a TV show? I ain't got no goddamn TV show. She's 13 years old. Said, Catch Me Outside. She got a TV show. She making millions of dollars. I'm broke as hell. I'm out here hungry, and she's famous.
Yeah.
Well, now
you
that
saying
I-
it's short lived, but she can get paid for the rest of her life now. She invests $1 million. She good.
Well, now that I'm in my early 30s,
You won't, though.
I can look ahead.
Not a point. So yeah, you saying short lived or not? Like that kind of stuff really affects us.
Okay,
but
well,
it's the spark.
But
right?
there's always
That's the
been
small piece.
There's always been one-hit wonders. That's not new. There have always been people that were a flash in the pan that came along and got the deal. We think that's new because it's people that pop up online. They do something. They go whoa ho ho, and then people go, "It's the whoa ho ho guy," and they put him in a commercial.
That's good.
And
You
then
should keep that.
and then it becomes the series, and he pops up for a little while. That has always happened. That has always happened.
But MC
And-
Hammer didn't get $1 million for his stupid pants. You know what I mean? Like he's still touring
he
around.
made way more than $1 million for his stupid pants.
Not right away. Not in a day.
Oh, okay, not in a day. But my point is, there's been flash in the pan, one-hit wonder success forever. That's fleeting. It comes and it goes. We said that about reality television. They said that about television.
Right.
They said that
But
the stars.
color
never
thing will never
before
last.
has the flash in the pan drowned out the long-term
Yeah.
creators.
You feel drowned out?
I mean,
Well,
not-
like I was talking to like
Okay, for
Adam
instance,
McGoyan, for example. I was talking to him about his first feature experience, and like he was like looking at sort of my generation of filmmakers, and he's just like, I wouldn't even be able to do it in this environment. Like for him, he made a film just by the time the film had been made, he had also kind of made it. Do you know what I mean? Like that was it. It was making it, and then but it was already on a trajectory to go out. Of course, then people have to like it or dislike it,
right.
but it was on a trajectory to be seen and evaluated and experienced. Whereas now, content creators, usually they carry other people are paying for it mostly. Like he got the funding and he did it. But now the expectation is for you to carry the project, whatever it is, if it's feature film or a new web series or even the competitions like that promote new content. Usually you have to make a trailer before you make a film. I made the web advertising
Right,
and the
right.
trailer for my film 2 years before I shot it.
right. Even now there's the IPF.
Well,
to even get the IPF funding,
You need
have
to
to make
shoot
a trailer
it.
and then be like, please give me the money, and then you got to go through this pecking order.
And you got to
then
beg
you
for,
get the-
you got to get views, and then
Right,
based on
right,
like
right.
it's and
will
and
say this.
Cineku is the same way.
I will say this: what I've noticed, where I've seen the industry going, and you'll probably agree with this, and we'll leave it on this. But what I think is that that saturation is there. What I just said is true. It's never been cheaper to create your own content. It's never been more possible for you to create your own content. But it's not enough to create your own content. Content creators are now also marketers.
Yes.
They're also
Yeah, yeah.
advertisers. They're also the marketing guys. They're the dudes in the suits.
And
it
often
used to
a
be the creative people
self-distributor.
and the suits. Now we are the suits too. What?
And also a self-distributor.
And also self-distributor.
Thanks to a
Is
new
that
app,
the
you can
future
just,
as
you know.
well?
Is it the future? I don't think it's going to be the only future. I don't think that you're no longer going to see produced broadcast sort of quality television, but I think it's definitely the future in terms of you're going to see a rise in content creators who are jack of all trades, definitely.
And
Definitely.
to get to sometimes those bigger shows, you have to prove yourself. Letterkenny
to.
being the perfect example.
Yeah,
Started
yeah.
as a Twitter account, went to a YouTube channel, then became a series, and now it's a hit series.
that was on what, season
But
two,
if they had
season
just pitched it without the eyeballs on those earlier content
Would've never got through.
platforms,
Well, let's hope that happens with this show. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panel. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thanks for being here. All right. As always, I want to thank my guests. Please give it up for Erica Fox.
Yeah.
That's Jackie English.
Come on, girl.
Jolte Lay.
Yeah.
And everyone's favorite villain, RJ Skinner. And as always, when the show is over, we hope you join the conversation off stage. Thanks, everybody.
Cool, man.
Thank you.